This is episode 1 of a brand new podcast co-hosted by myself, Richie Downs, aka Capricorn, and Brian Tinsman himself, former lead designer at Magic the Gathering and game design lead at Wonders of the First. And we don't have a name for this podcast yet, but we will be coming up with one shortly. If you have ideas, definitely let me know in the comments what you think we should use as a name. And if you see a name in the thumbnail or in the title, it means we already came up with a name and edited this to include the name. But first and foremost, thank you for joining me for this podcast, Brian, episode 1. So glad to have you.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Richie. How you doing?
This is going to be exciting. So basically, this podcast is going to be a way for me and Brian with very different viewpoints, very different experiences within collectible card games to talk about everything that's happening in the greater world of collectible card games, and just all of the news, all of the hot ticket items, what's happening in the world of CCGs, and our individual takes on those things. I think it'll be pretty exciting, and we're gonna dive right in. Brian, I am so happy to have you here. We have a lot to talk about today. I believe we have 7 topics, and the first of which is a little thing called Final Fantasy. Have you seen the Final Fantasy set for Magic the Gathering yet?
I have not seen the whole set yet. I'm usually very up to date on spoiler announcements, but I've only seen a couple of cards so far.
So Brian's pretty new. I've been keeping up with all of the spoilers day to day on my channel, and there's a ton of craziness coming in this set. And before we get into any of the other topics that I have lined up for today, I just really need to get Brian's opinion on some of these cards, especially with Brian coming from a background in design. I'm super curious what he thinks about some of the individual cards, some of the mechanics that are new, and just overall the craziness that's coming in Final Fantasy. So are you ready to dive in, Brian?
Yeah.
Alright, we're gonna look first at a card called Jumbo Cactuar. This is a 1/7 creature plant for 2 green and 5, and it has the 10,000 Needles ability, so whenever this creature attacks, it gets plus 9,999 power until end of turn. What's your initial thought on this card, Brian?
This is one of the ones that I have seen before. It was spoiled super early, and it's pretty cool. It's stepping into a little kind of meme-ish territory because, like, there's never been a non-unset that is playing with these kinds of numbers before, but it is doing a good job of, like, kind of making your eyes go wide when you first see it and seeming like super strong. Like, can they really do this?
Right.
R&D has done a really good job. Good job, guys. With cards that kind of make you sit up and pay attention and look exciting, and then when you actually go to play them, you're like, oh, okay, this is, kind of reasonable. Like this is not going to break anything. But this one in particular too, like it definitely will get your Johnny ideas about, like, okay, what can you do here? Use alter dimension to mill him out or something like that after one attack, right?
I like that functionally it doesn't do a whole lot more than something that said, like, just give plus 100 power would do, but there is a little bit of wiggle room there. If you're up against a life gain deck and they go off and they have like 300, 400, 1,000 life, whatever it is, just give this guy trample and you can still one-shot a life gain deck. I can't see very many other instances where having that absurd amount of power could actually matter mechanically, but I think there's a little bit of wiggle room in there. The one thing I noticed the most about this, though, is it seems to be a top-down design, which I know you know a lot about. What's your opinion on the idea of naming the ability 10,000 Needles, even though that keyword isn't really functionally a keyword, it's kind of just for flavor?
Yeah, It's a good practice in general. I think it acts as a handle that people can use during gameplay, right? They can say, I use 10,000 needles, as opposed to, I use the triggered ability. Oh, what's the triggered ability? Everyone will know this one. But and it's something that you see on like Pokemon cards and things like that too. Like it works really well and helps develop the idea of what's happening in the battle. So
Right.
Good. Yeah, they started doing this a bit on with the D&D sets, and I thought it kind of proved it out that it works well there.
Absolutely. We're going to move on to the next card. The next one I want to look at is called Ultima. This is a sorcery for 2 white and 3. It looks like it's the sweeper coming in this set. Destroy all artifacts and creatures. End the turn. Now, if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure this is only the second card that was ever released in Magic that ends the turn, with Time Stop being the only other one. But this is on a sorcery, so this functions very differently. I'm curious, like, what your thoughts are on that line of text and how it might apply to, the way the card functions. Because it's interesting. Like, Time Stop ending the turn at instant speed, it's pretty obvious the ways in which that matters, You get to stop your opponent from doing anything else, take away a lot of their value. But a sorcery speed sweeper with sort of like a time stop and the turn effect on it can't be used in the same ways. That kind of stood out to me.
Yeah, right. It seems like off the top of my head, the end the turn clause is a drawback because you'd like to do a board wipe and then drop a bunch of your own stuff that you can use before anyone else can drop their stuff onto the board. But it's pretty interesting that you can actually build around this for effects that normally would last until the end step, and then you get to skip your end step with this and keep those effects going on longer.
That could be interesting.
Maybe. Yeah.
The one thing I was thinking, and you would know better than me if this is how it actually works, but any kind of death triggers from you wiping the board with an Ultima, I believe you would end the turn with those triggers still on the stack and they wouldn't resolve. Does it seem like that's how that would function?
Yeah, right.
So if you were up against like an Aristocrats or Sacrifice style deck, this could be a way to have a board wipe against that kind of deck without getting all of the death benefits that those decks are normally associated with. That's kind of immediately where my head went. And I guess the reason my head went there is because of the next card we're going to look at, which to me signals that Aristocrats and Sacrifice style decks are going to be pretty huge after this set. And that is Sephiroth Fabled Soldier. This is a 3/3 legendary human avatar soldier for 1 black and 2. When he enters or attacks, you may sacrifice another creature. If you do, you draw a card. Whenever another creature dies, target opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. If this is the 4th time this ability has resolved this turn, transform Sephiroth. So, right out of the gate, he's basically a 3-mana Blood Artist that also gives you an enter and attack trigger where you can sack something to draw built in. But if 4 things die and get that trigger in the same turn, he flips to his backside and becomes Sephiroth One-Winged Angel, a 5/5 flying legendary angel nightmare avatar with flying. Has the Supernova ability, so as this creature transforms, you get an emblem with whenever a creature dies, target opponent loses a life and you gain a life. Which emblems can't be interacted with in any way. They normally only come from planeswalkers, so that's kind of crazy. And then also, whenever Sephiroth attacks, you may sacrifice any number of other creatures. If you do, draw that many cards. Everything about this card just seems super pushed to me, and I'm just, you know, as an old school Magic designer going back a number of years, I'm curious what your take is on this card and how nuts it is for sacrifice decks.
Yeah, it turns into a very low-cost early draw engine that becomes an even stronger draw engine later on. It's a little bit like limited by the fact that it's potentially target opponent. If you have more than one opponent, so you're not clearing the entire table all at once.
Right.
But like this sort of has everything built into it, which, look, if it's going to be the star headliner of the set, and there's only like a couple of cards at this power level in the entire set, then it's okay. Like it, make it a crazy engine. It's legendary. People can save up their Swords of Plowshares just for this guy.
Right.
But like, it's usually not a good practice to put easy triggering of aristocrat effects and life gain and life loss and draw engine and abilities that can't be interacted with.
It's a lot.
All on one card, right?
It's a really good example.
This is taking away the ability of players to set up their situation, right?
Yeah, it synergizes with itself.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah.
It's, to me, this card is an example of the power creep in Magic right now, just how crazy it is. You could argue that, well, spot removal just removes it, And because of power creep, most spot removal is 2 mana these days, and Sephiroth costs 3, but you're still getting value the turn that you play it. The things that I notice about it is we haven't got a legitimate Blood Artist effect in Standard for a very, very long time. All of the different variations of Blood Artist type creatures we've gotten over the last however many years have only triggered when your own stuff dies. Blood Artist always used to trigger when either player's stuff dies, and this is the first time in a long time we have a card coming into Standard that goes back to the Blood Artist way of doing it, where it's anybody's creatures. Granted, it's 3 mana, so it's 2 more, but it has so much other stuff stacked on it that it's just... It blows my mind how nuts it is.
Yeah. My card, by the way, Blood Artist. I typed that Blood Artist into the file and then had to go sell the rest of the team on it. It wasn't very hard.
It's so good. It's one of my favorite cards. I didn't realize that was one of your cards.
Yeah.
But yeah, Blood Artist is my go-to. I love the idea of setting yourself up with a board where you have a goal that you're inevitably going to get to, but at the same time, if they try to stop your goal and wipe your board, you're still going to get all of that value. It's almost like you set yourself up with a checks and balances. It's like a screwed if you do, screwed if you don't.
Kind of the opposite of the Cactar in that a 0/1 Blood Artist doesn't look very powerful if you're just like a casual player, but then once you see it go off, you're like, oh my god.
Right.
Yeah.
But I just can't believe this guy.
Sephiroth is it's setting up this draw engine thing, which if it did everything that it's currently doing and just had a limit on the card draw, I'd be happier with it.
Yeah, does seem a little too pushed. I feel like it's the best card Aristocrats has ever got.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong about that, but that's my gut take on it. The fact that it can give you an emblem when it transforms is just nutty. You can never get rid of an emblem. No matter how many times your opponent wipes the board, the emblems outside of the game state. So it's just, I don't know. It's crazy. Have you ever played any of the Final Fantasy games, Brian?
Long ago. So
Long
not
ago.
recently.
Do you remember any of them?
No, I don't remember which ones.
Well, 7's one of the more popular ones, and Sephiroth's one of the most popular characters. So I guess it kind of makes sense that they're gonna push it like crazy. But we're gonna move on.
I will say that thumbs up for putting on attacking triggers, because like that is sort of like a natural limitation of the number of times you can activate it per turn, as well as rewarding players for doing what they already want to do and what they should be doing, like to advance the game state, move the game forward. Yes, you should attack. Like when in doubt, you should be attacking, as opposed to when in doubt, sit back and do nothing. So it's like,
I agree.
Yeah.
Very cool. The next card we're going to look at is Lindblum Industrial Regency. This is a land town, enters tapped, taps for 1 red mana, and it has an adventure attached. We are getting a cycle of lands in this set. It's the first time we've ever got lands that had adventures. So at instant speed, as an instant, you can pay 1 red and 2 to cast Mage Siege, which creates a 0/1 black wizard creature token with whenever you cast a non-creature spell, this token deals 1 damage to each opponent. And then the card goes into exile, like all adventures, and then you can just play the land afterwards from exile if you want. Or if you really need the land in play, you can just not even go for the Mage Siege and just play it as a land. So yeah, just completely new, like they've never done this on lands before, these adventures. So I'm curious what your thought is on using that mechanic in that way, and how good this actually is.
Yeah, pretty cool. I'm kind of naturally skeptical of whenever you cast a non-creature spell triggered abilities. They're kind of hard to build around. I've tried to build around them quite a few times and found them to be like really fussy, and I'm not excited to go, keep trying to build more of those. And like they kind of go off really well, or they fizzle out. But that said, it's a cool design space to explore. It's like really low opportunity cost to throw this in a deck and just like see what happens. Right? It's very much like a split card. Like if you need the land, you use it. If you need the token ability, you use that one.
It kind of reminds me a bit of what they were doing back in the last Zendikar set that came out, where they did the modal double-faced lands. So they had a land on one side, spell on the other side, and you could choose to play it as either or. And what I always liked about that, and I was really bummed they only did it for one set, is I felt like that was moving Magic closer to being a game that sort of mitigated some of the problems with Mana Flood and Mana Screw, where you could have more lands in your deck than you otherwise might build into your deck, because a bunch of them could be the modal double-faced lands, and then also have more spells in your deck because they're modal double-faced lands. So, a certain percentage of your mana base can be either, then that means you have more lands and more spells in a deck that's still 60 cards, and it helps avoid some flooding and some mana screwing. And because I feel like Mana Flood and Mana Screw is like the biggest problem that Magic has these days. And so I was always really excited about exploring that design space. And then they never went back to it after that set. And it almost seems like they're doing something a little bit similar here, except instead of having to choose one or the other, if you play the adventure, you can still play the land afterwards.
Yeah, I agree with that, and that's something that R&D has been working on for ages. Like even back when I was in R&D, cycling was created essentially for that purpose. That if you're stuck on 2 lands, you have the choice to cycle or single colored mana cycling to get closer to your next land drop, or land cycling was created for that purpose too. There's a lot of mechanics that are either obviously or maybe less obviously giving players the choice to reduce their deck efficiency a bit in exchange for land consistency. This is a pretty cool usage of that.
Yeah, I like the direction it's going. I do think that's the biggest problem with Magic these days, is as the power creep gets crazier, the problems that come with Mana Flood and Mana Screw get more consequential. And so I feel like trying to move the game in a direction that helps mitigate some of that is probably smart, and this is like a way they could do it. It seems like they've tried a bunch of different ways over the last 5 or so years. Sometimes you see lands with like really good abilities built in so that they don't feel like they're completely dead draws if you get them later on in the game. Stuff like that. But yeah, it seems to be moving in an interesting direction. The next card I want to talk about is an example of my favorite card type in the set, my favorite new card mechanic that's coming in this set, and I'm super curious to hear your thoughts on it. So, when sagas were introduced in Dominaria, that card type became my favorite card type in the game, because I liked that it sort of felt like a fixed planeswalker, because it gave you value over multiple turns that you only had to pay for once, but it wasn't as crazy as a planeswalker where you could just keep getting value forever. So I really, really liked sagas as a card type, and now they're taking sagas and they're turning them into saga creatures to represent the summons.
Richard Garfield's design, I think, like he was like he came back in 2012 or somewhere around there, I think, and brought the saga ideas.
Right, I remember reading something about that, and I just really, really love those cards. So we're looking at Summon Bahamut. And to just lay the groundwork here for some flavor, in the Final Fantasy games, there are extra crazy, extra special spells that you can get that are summons. And in some of the games, they just act as the end-all, be-all spells that do the most damage. When you cast Summon Bahamut, Big Dragon shows up, does a crazy big attack that does a ton of damage, disappears. So it would function like a normal spell. In other versions of the game, they started to take them in a different direction, and when you summon them, they would show up on the battlefield, stay for a while, help fight whatever enemy you're doing, and then do a big, nasty, crazy spell attack before going away. And dissipating into the ether, if you will. And what they did to represent that flavor in the game is they made all of the summons creatures that are sagas. Sagas have abilities that trigger on, Chapter 1, Chapter 2, Chapter 3, Chapter 4, 4 turns in a row. After the last chapter triggers, they get sacrificed and go away. So when I saw that they were turning summons into sagas that were creatures, that made all of the sense in the world to me from a flavor perspective, because it's a creature that's eventually gonna have to be sacrificed when all of the saga chapters are done, just like a normal saga. And I just love that flavor. This one in particular, Summon Bahamut, is 9 colorless mana for a 9/9 flying enchantment creature saga dragon. Chapter 1 destroys a non-land permanent. Chapter 2 destroys a non-land permanent. Chapter 3, you draw 2 cards. And then Chapter 4, he casts Mega Flare before you sacrifice him. This creature deals damage equal to the total mana value of other permanents you control to each opponent. What's your thought on this card type?
This guy's cool as hell. I love him. This is a challenging card type to make work, because like you got to include all the info on there so that a player can understand it immediately, like how it operates. And it's a great flavor fit. It looks powerful. It's probably looks splashier than it actually is, because if you're in a competitive scene, you probably don't get him all the way to his last abilities. But if you do, man, what an awesome moment! What a big payoff!
Right.
Puts pressure on your opponent or your opponents to deal with him. So this gets like 2 big thumbs up from me. The only thing is like it's a shame that the art has to be small. That art piece deserves more space, unfortunately, and I can kind of see that maybe he has his arms crossed in front of his face. I can't even really see his face very much. So
they do have some alternate art versions where they go a little deeper with the art seemingly taking up more space by basically making the frame a little bit more see-through so that you can see more of the art underneath. But for like the default card style like this, they try to, put function over form, I guess, and make sure people can read exactly what the card does as clearly as possible. But I did notice on the other alternate art versions, they make the art a little bit more prominent. And that's probably because of, some of the criticism that you're leveling at it, which makes sense. But there are a ton of these summons within the set. They go all the way from uncommon up to mythic. So obviously the uncommon ones are much more underpowered. This is like one of the big end-all be-all summons you can usually get in a Final Fantasy. Giant dragon, But I
super cool.
I think
nice job, guys. It makes me want to build around with like counter doublers too.
And evaluating it is really, really hard for me because, like, sure, it's a big 9/9 flying creature, but it can only attack 2 turns. It can only attack on Chapter 2 and Chapter 3. Because the turn you play it, you'll trigger Chapter 1, you'll destroy something, but it'll have Summoning Sickness. Chapter 2, you'll destroy something else, you'll get the opportunity to attack. Chapter 3, you'll draw 2 cards, you'll get the opportunity to attack. Chapter 4, you'll get that big spell, but then it sacrifices itself. So you only get 2 turns to attack with it, or 3 turns to block with it. So it's like, do you evaluate it the way you would normally evaluate a 9/9 flying creature? Or do you need to take into account the fact that it has very limited turns in which it can attack or block?
Yeah.
Seems like
most of my gameplay for the past couple of years has been either draft or commander, and so kind of evaluating this from a commander perspective, and this is a huge target, right? Because you have this dream of like, okay, on the turn after you play this, you want to drop like a whole bunch of high mana value stuff on the board, but then it has to last until your next turn comes around, right? So all that stuff can be destroyed, or this can be destroyed. So,
yeah, that's the other part to take into account. The fact that it's a creature is not just an upside; it's also a downside because it opens it up to more ways for it to get removed. You could never just remove a normal saga with creature removal and stop the person from ever getting the other saga abilities. With this, it's like just a Swords to Plowshares, and you're losing all of those abilities now. So I think it's a little tricky to evaluate because of that. It's a creature, but it's only a limited creature, and there's good sides to that, but it's easy to remove. There's a lot to take into account, and I do not envy the design team having to balance these cards, because to me it feels like it was probably a nightmare. I don't know.
It is nice. Yeah, this card gets all A's for me, except for maybe for the art. Although I do notice that it's doing the Eldrazi trick, which is if it's not an artifact, but it is colorless, we have art shining through from the back, which is, again, like you people don't appreciate like all of the back and forth and the arguing and the persuasion to make a little change like that we got through on Rise of Eldrazi, and like here we are today, how many years later, 15 years later, 14 years later, and still using those principles that we hammered out. So it's like, hell yeah, guys, good job.
It's the little things that matter, really. And a lot of times most people won't even notice it, but it hits them on a subconscious level, and it does make a difference. So I think it's really cool.
Yeah, as long as there's a version of this that has big art, then I'll be happy.
We got just a few more cards we're gonna go over and get through here before we move on. But the next one sort of combines the idea of the summon card I just showed you, and also sort of the flip card that we got with Sephiroth in one card, and that's Clive Ifrit's Dominant. He's a 5/5 legendary human noble warrior for 2 red and 4. When he enters, you may discard your hand and then draw cards equal to your devotion to red, which, even if your board is empty, he counts as 2, so he'll draw you 2. And even if you have no cards to discard, you could discard 0 and it still counts as you discarding your hand if you discard, if you have no hand. So that's kind of cool. And then you can pay 2 red, 4, and tap him, exile him, return him to the battlefield transformed. He comes back as Ifrit, Warden of Inferno, basically turns into one of the summons. So it's a 9/9 legendary enchantment creature Saga Demon. On Chapter 1, as soon as you flip him, he triggers the Lunge ability, and he fights up to one other target creature. And then on both Chapter 2 and 3, he'll trigger Brimstone, add 4 red mana to your mana pool, and if Ifrit has 3 or more lore counters on it, you exile it, return it to the battlefield face up as Clive. And you could theoretically just keep doing that to your heart's content with that activated ability. This card's really, really interesting. It's doing an awful lot. I'm just kind of curious what you think.
I'm not a fan of what's happening here. I can see the desire to really capture the character and have the card abilities match what the character does. And if you want to do this kind of thing, like very, very rarely, okay, fine. But this is kind of like a entrenched advanced player only type of card.
This is a mythic.
Even an expert player is gonna have to keep track of a lot of stuff when this is on the board, right? Like in a commander game, if this is on the board, I'm gonna be constantly checking it and referencing it, what state is it in, what stage is it in. They did this kind of thing before with the Praetors, and I don't think those cards ended up working out that great.
To set the stage flavor-wise, this guy's from Final Fantasy 16, which is the newest one that came out just last year, and the story revolves around these characters that are dominants that become the summons. It was the first time in the series where characters actually transformed into the summons rather than actually summoned them. So I think they were approaching this top-down, trying to capture that flavor. There's only 3 cards in this set that do this in this way, change into a summon. And I'm pretty sure they're all mythic. I'm not 100% on that, but I'm pretty sure all 3 are mythic. So I agree with you for the most part. I see what they're trying to do, and I have an appreciation for taking that top-down approach, trying to go the, form of the dragon route, if you will. But it does seem pretty complicated. It seems like a lot.
Yeah. There's a lot of text, a lot of stages, a lot of different states that it can be in, and is the juice worth the squeeze for keeping track of everything that's happening there? For some players it will be, but for everyone else it's a table. Here's my analogy. There's an ice cream shop near me that just has great chocolate ice cream, and if you want to put some crush-ins, some Oreos on top of it or something, nice, good choice. But a little kid comes in and starts putting on sprinkles and gummy bears and everything, and they mix it all together. You can't even taste the ice cream anymore. too much going on. And it's like the basic game of Magic, it's fun. Like the fundamentals, the
Right.
foundation of it, it's fun to play with, just French vanillas. And if too much of it becomes like the 10 Crushkin version like this, you don't need it, and you can't appreciate the good quality of the basics.
I'm curious if in your time designing for Magic you ever encountered situations similar to this, where like either someone else on the team was trying to come up with an idea for a card that you felt was just too much and you had to scale it back, or maybe vice versa.
Oh yeah, sure. I'm guilty of doing this kind of thing, and that was kind of part of my journey in game design to look back and see like which ones were winners and which ones were losers. To kind of tell a story with a card. I got pushback on wanting to do double face cards for a long time, and so ended up being okay, how about flip cards? And those got into like the original Kamigawa, and then in Rise of the Eldrazi, I pushed through levelers, and I really wanted to do put a level counter on this, and then it gets new abilities as it gets more level counters on it. And looking back, like those did not become classic cards that are still largely widely beloved today, and why is that? But then I also pushed through Figure of Destiny, which has been super influential in a lot of other designs. So all of those cards are fussy and have weird layouts and work in weird ways. If I could go back, I'm not sure I would do the flip cards again. Not sure I would do the levelers in that way again, but
Right. So we've got 2 cards left. Before we move on really quickly, I just wanted to mention I'm really excited about some of the transforming cards in this set because I am a big fan of a card called Agatha's Soul Cauldron. Do you know that card at all?
Mm-hmm.
So you can exile creatures from your graveyard and put a counter on a creature you control, and then all creatures that you control with counters gain all of the activated abilities of things that are exiled with the Cauldron. So what I want to do is exile creatures that have very cheap transform abilities to put a counter on something like Sephiroth or Clive or one of these big crazy transforming things, so that I can just keep transforming it back and forth for very low cost. Especially with the Sephiroth card that we saw, every time he transforms into his backside, you get that emblem. So you could just stack up emblems. That's just me being me and trying to find ways to do stupid things that, make my opponent have a light bulb moment. But I think that'll be kind of fun. It doesn't necessarily mean I disagree with your take on Clive, though. I do think it's a situation where they pushed a little bit too hard on the top-down direction, and it might be just a little bit too much on one card. But the reason I bring up Agatha's Soul Cauldron is because of the next card that we're going to talk about. We've got 2 more cards to go over, and then we've got some other interesting topics to get to after that. So the first of which is Gogo, Master of Mimicry. He's a 2/4 legendary wizard for 1 blue and 2. And you can pay X and tap him to copy target activated or triggered ability you control X times. You may choose new targets for the copies. So for every 2 mana you spend, you're copying any activated or triggered ability while it's on the stack. And with Agatha's Soul Cauldron, that's the reason I get excited about it. You could exile this guy from the graveyard and give potentially all of your creatures the ability to do this, which just seems nutty to me. But even that aside, just the card by itself, is it just me, or is this card incredibly broken? Because it seems like way too good.
Yeah, right. And I'm trying to think of, whenever triggered untap effects, so you can reuse him, and activated mana abilities. Like you can probably loop this endlessly.
Well, it does say in the reminder text, mana abilities can't be targeted. So it won't let you hit a mana ability. But anything else is on the table. I was thinking that at first too, and I was like losing my mind because I thought it was stupid good. But if it can't target mana abilities, it does get reeled in a little bit more. But even just like triple, quadruple your Phyrexian Arena trigger. I think some of the better ones are sagas or planeswalkers. Use a loyalty ability, copy it a bunch of times. Have your saga trigger for free, copy it a bunch of times, because those are things that aren't going to require mana on your part, so you can save all of your mana for Gogo's ability. When I start thinking of it like that, especially with these new saga creatures being introduced in this set, it just starts to seem really, really crazy to me. But it is a playground. Like, you look at this card and a playground just forms in your brain of like all the crazy stuff you can do. And I have to say that props off for them for accomplishing that, because I feel like that's like the number, you would know better than I do, but I feel like that's the number one thing you try to do as a designer when you're making cards, is like when you can make a card where as soon as someone sees it, they just have 1,000 thoughts in their brain of all the craziness they can do, and they become obsessed with trying to find ways to play the card. Like, I feel like that's probably a designer's dream. Like, that's what you want to do, right?
Yeah, that's definitely one of the exciting things that you can do. You're like deep into the deck design and brewing crazy stuff rabbit hole. Like you're further than 90% of people. So I know that those kinds of things are gonna like hit you more powerfully than most other people. So.
Well, for me, deck design is the closest I get to game design. So the kind of things that excite you when ideas pop into your head about, designing the actual games, closest I get to that is when I'm putting decks together. I can kind of get that same feeling from like figuring out like, oh, no one's thought of this. It could be used in this way, and like everyone would lose their mind when they see me do that. And it kind of scratches that same itch that I assume you probably get from designing.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of the defining features of a hobby game, is to invite the player to be a co-designer of the experience, right? With the trading card game, you design your deck and you analyze the meta and you design your experience. Same with, Dungeons and Dragons, tabletop RPGs, same with minis games, all those hobbies you can go deeply into. You're the co-designer of what you play.
I agree with you 100%. And those light bulb moments are addicting. When you feel
I
like...
think this card might break into Intruder Alarm.
I agree with that. You're probably right. Oh my god. But that's going to bring us to the last card, which I think is the most broken card in the set, at least so far. There are a couple more days left to spoiler season at the time of recording this video. But this is Vivi Ornitier, the cute little lovable black mage from Final Fantasy IX. He's a 0/3 legendary wizard for 3 mana in the colors of Izzet. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you can put a counter on him, +1/+1 counter, and he deals 1 damage to each opponent. Dealing 1 damage to each opponent when you cast a non-creature spell is just the flavor of wizards in this set. We saw the wizard token earlier. But gets a +1/+1 counter when you cast a non-creature spell. For 0 mana, add X mana in any combination of blue and or red, where X is Vivi's power. Activate only during your turn and only once each turn. Is this stupid good? Is this modern playable?
Doesn't seem like it to me. You are you're getting a mana boost, but the mana boost is limited, and if you can buff his power, you'll get more mana. And yeah, so like the real concern is like being able to do some huge storm count on non-creature spells. So yeah, this is basically a storm card, is what it looks like.
That was my thought at first too. I didn't think it was broken at first, and then I realized if I cast a Monstrous Rage on Vivi, which is just a 1 red mana spell, instant, +2/+0 until end of turn, and puts a monstrous roll token on it, which gives it +1/+1 and trample forever. Basically, that 1 mana Monstrous Rage gives me 4 mana back. It becomes a better Dark Ritual. And not only that, but putting the +1/+1 counter on Vivi means you're also going to get more mana out of that ability in subsequent turns, even without extra casts of non-creature spells. That seems nuts. Like, 1 mana, Monstrous Rage, this guy gets a counter, he gets the Monstrous Roll token, bringing up another +1/+1, he gets +2/+0 until end of turn for Monstrous Rage. He becomes a 4/5? He becomes a 4/5, and then you could immediately just spend 0 and get 4 mana. So you could theoretically play Vivi, play a 1 mana pump spell on turn 4 with your 4 mana, and then use his 0 ability and get 4 mana back.
He seems pretty killable, so like if you're building around this, maybe you don't even put him on the board until you're ready to go off.
That's what I'm thinking. But I think if you were relying on just the +1/+1 counters from the non-creature spells, it does seem pretty balanced. But when you take into account all of the cheap little ways, especially the stuff that like mono red likes to use, not that you'd use this in mono red, but all of those cheap little instant speed pump spells, you could get his power really high and then just get a whole bunch of mana back and do something I don't even want to think about because it would be that gross. And it scares me. It really scares me.
Yeah, you drop him and then put an equipment on him that gives him a big power buff, and then that is going to give you some more mana to go off with your storm count.
Right. I think there's a lot of different subtle ways you could increase his power to get a lot of value out of him the turn that you play him. And as long as you can get a bunch of value out of him the turn that you play him, at that point, I don't want to say it doesn't matter if they kill him or not, but it doesn't hurt as bad if they kill him, because you're probably pulling ahead enough just from that one turn of using him. But
yeah. I think he's fun. He's cool. I'm a fan of Storm. I made Storm in in Scourge, and had to fight with Rules Team to get that one through too. So
well, yeah, Storm is. I think they have what they call a Storm scale now, which is how likely a mechanic is to return in another set someday. And the whole reason they call it the Storm scale is because the Storm ability is the least likely to return in another set someday because it's so powerful. I don't know if that's something they implemented while you were still there or later, but they call it the Storm scale.
Yeah. But while I was there, they were the discussion was that Storm is never ever coming back because it's so broken and so difficult to deal with. And then to hammer that home, the Storm scale became an illustration where if Storm is a 10 on this scale, then when will other mechanics come back? Where is Infect on the Storm scale and that kind of thing? And then Storm was popular over the years, and then the definition kind of shifted so that it was now it was like, well, what is the likelihood of a mechanic to come back in a standard legal set? And so they could get away with putting it into commander decks and things like that. And then quite a few of them came back, and the Universes Beyond cards were made standard legal, and so like the storm scale's kind of like doesn't have a purpose at that point. So
Right.
I feel, and then Storm Scale Dragon came out as like a little nod to the Storm Scale. So like to me that was a capitulation that like, okay, Storm Scale's we're making fun of it now, so I don't take it too seriously.
I do like that they find little ways here and there of slipping it in a way that's very, very controlled, so that it doesn't, overtake the formats that it's legal in. They did that a little while ago too with a Planeswalker. One of the RALs had an ultimate ability you could eventually get to, where it activated Storm in some way, but since it was an ultimate, you had to jump through a lot of hoops and wait a bunch of turns in order to make it happen. And then also, like you said, the Storm Scale, the dragon.
Yeah, I interpret Storm Scale Dragon as a personal message to me that they were wrong about the Storm Scale. So I accept your message.
Fair enough. So final verdict. Do you think I'm crazy for thinking this is broken? Do you think I should temper my expectations there?
I think it's. I don't think it's broken. I think it's cool. I think it can probably do a few crazy stuff, but I think it's quite killable. And so somebody will get killed by it, and they'll claim it's broken. But I don't think it's gonna like take over.
Maybe it's because of my Agatha's Soul Cauldron obsession, and I want to just exile this guy with the Soul Cauldron and turn all of my creatures into creatures that have that ability. I don't know. We'll see.
We need some terminology to differentiate like cards that actually dominate a format and shift the meta versus cards that you can lose to spectacularly and people complain they're broken, but they don't actually shift the meta.
Yeah, we're gonna have to think of some new terminology. If anyone watching has ideas, let me know in the comments for terminology to distinguish between the two. In fact, if anyone watching, I would like your opinions. If you think I'm right or you think Brian's right, is VV broken or is VV manageable? Let me know in the comments. I think it's pretty interesting. But that's going to do it as far as rounding up some Final Fantasy cards and getting your thoughts on that. There are obviously a ton more cards coming, and spoiler season isn't even over. Maybe we can dip our toe into a couple more cards next episode. Our second topic, which is recently Wonders of the First, which is the game that you are currently the design lead on, was announced at... it will be appearing at every SCG CON. We announced a partnership. I did a video on it not too long ago. You guys have a partnership with SCG CON, and you're going to be at every SCG CON. They're handling your competitive tour. And I'm curious what your thoughts are on that, and like how you're feeling about it, and like what it was like approaching that sort of partnership from the inside. I'm just really curious to hear how you're feeling about this.
Yeah, I feel incredibly lucky to have the opportunity to do this like so quickly out of the gate. Like the set has only been available for a couple of months now, and then like already the reception has been so positive. And Star City Games is not gonna take on a partnership like this with like some game that doesn't have a strong rule set and doesn't have potential to get big, right? That like we got feedback from them that like, yeah, this can really grow a lot and support like a rigorous competitive environment. And I'm like, oh my God, it's amazing. It's amazing achievement, right, to get that level of confidence so quickly. Like usually, you take a year or something like that to work out a lot of the kinks of the game, but like, bam, out of the gate, there we go, man. It's super awesome. Right. And we're going to have a new set launching in October with a new set of rules and stuff like that. So that is mechanics that we have to work out, and like the vote of confidence from them too, that we're going to be able to like they didn't wait for our second set to drop before they're ready to like yeah, this thing is rocking.
Yeah, we're gonna dip our toes into asking you about that new set a little bit later on, but I'm just super excited about the competitive play tour at SCG CON. As someone who's played this game for like 9 months now, I'm stoked. I'm gonna be at every single one. I'm gonna play at every single one. I'm just glad I get to play this game more. And I know we have confirmation that the first one's happening in Orlando, and it will for sure be sealed, which I'm excited about because my first time playing sealed was at the first Shattering launch event. Never thought about playing this game sealed. I was so deep into building decks for Constructed, and I had more fun playing it sealed at the first Shattering than I've ever had playing a sealed Magic event, which just I did not expect at all. It blew my mind. I couldn't believe it, and I've ever since coming back from South Carolina, I've been obsessed with that. I'm like, I cannot believe how good this game was sealed. And like, I keep asking myself, is that just is it just a coincidence? Did I happen to have just a bunch of really good games in a row? Or is this just the way it is always? I don't know, but I'm excited to find out. So I'm excited to play more sealed.
Excited to see that. I was excited to see that how well it played in sealed too, because like you have your playtest team, and generally you have expectations that like you know the sealed archetypes for a large portion of the decks that you're going to see, but we saw a lot of sealed builds that we didn't really expect, and that performed well, and so we're sort of like, oh wow, like emergent things are happening already out of the gate. And I think one of the reasons was we tuned the power level of the cards fairly tightly, meaning that like if you have a very kind of broad bell curve with a low peak, then you know which cards are the stronger ones, and it's more predictable. But if you have a bell curve of power level where the weak and the strong cards are pretty close to each other, it's much less predictable of what's gonna emerge with the combos that the players found. And so that's what happened. And we did that on purpose because we knew that a lot of people, it's a new game for them. For almost everyone, it's a new game for them, and they won't have a lot of experience or collection to compare against. And so like the opportunity for discovery, to be one of the first players to discover a new way of playing, is super high. And we decided that that effect is something you don't get to do very often, and we would kind of tune for that instead of tune for predictability.
Yeah, I was blown away. And what's cool too is somewhat, to a certain extent, evaluating the cards changes depending on it being limited or it being constructed. There were cards that I really, really underestimated that ended up being super good and limited. I remember Rav being one of them. Just that tap free ability to go +2 power and make something else -2 power. I had 2 in my sealed pool, and I played them both, and it ended up being hugely important. Just the fact that you get your Rav out, and it's just sitting there for the rest of the game. Anytime you need it, it's just there, and it doesn't cost an action to use. And like, that's a card I would never use when building a constructed deck. Maybe I wouldn't say never, but definitely a card that's very overlooked as far as constructed, and it just ended up being so important because of that tap free ability, and just how it changes your perception of cards, and so many of the cards at lower rarities like mattering so much to how the games play out. It just it got me all sorts of excited.
Once you get a few Ravs in your deck, then you start to look at the untapped cards too, and you're like, okay, my opponent knows that I can do -2 with the Rav, but they don't know I can untap it and do another -2 and take out the something big.
Right. And I remember I had a Wretched Mirror, which is an item that sacrifices to destroy a wonder, the next wonder that your opponent plays. And then I also had a Fire Flower, which is an item that sacrifices to destroy an attacking wonder in the same realm. And then because of that, I ended up splashing I believe his name is Nyx, the Heliosynth Wonder that gets an item back from the Abyss. Just because I knew I had a couple of powerful items that were going to inevitably send themselves to the Abyss, that card went way up on power, and trying to balance, like, well, do I splash for it? Do I include Heliosynth as one of my main orbitals in the deck? Like, there's just so much decision making, and I could go on and on and on. I'm not going to go down a rabbit hole with all of that, but I just fell in love with the limited format. So SCG CON, it's wild that you guys have a partnership with them so early. Like, I don't think any game has ever had this much of a presence at a big convention like SCG CON, like right out of the gates like this. It's kind of blew me away that it was happening. It felt like Christmas for me because I love the game so much. I'm like, I get to go to all of these events and just keep playing, you know, where people from around the country are probably going to gather, like some of the better players. And, you know, it's not just recruiting a few guys down the street that aren't as good at the game as me. It's like I get to show up and like really flex my muscles against, you know, better players at these big events. I'm just over the moon excited about it. I could gush forever. I apologize.
It's really good for the development team too, because like those guys run a tight ship, and they are like training up their judges, and they, you know, picking apart the rules, and you know, making us really pay attention to templating and clarity, and you know, making sure that you know, there's the whole thing is watertight with no leaks, and so it's pushing the game to be better immediately.
It's really, really exciting. But yeah, I also heard recently, I think we can announce that Wonders of the First is going to also be appearing at both Gen Con and Origins, which I'm pretty sure those announcements are super, super new. So everything's just continuing to grow. Like, I thought SCG CON was crazy enough, and obviously that's the bigger announcement since it's an entire competitive play tour at all of the locations. But like, also being at Origins and Gen Con, like, how fast is this game growing? It's just like overtaking the world, in my opinion. I don't know. It's crazy.
Yeah. You got to have a lot of confidence in your game to be able to jump into those big shows that quickly. And we're going to have activities, you know, learn to play, and
you guys must be terrified on your end, but on my end, being kind of outside, the man on the outside, I have confidence and faith. I know sometimes when you're close to a creative project that you're working on, sometimes it gets really hard to, you know, critique it or to really know, like, just how good it is. You get in your own head a lot. I know I used to do that a lot with music back when I was in bands when I was younger. And me being someone on the outside, you guys are probably terrified jumping in, you know, the big pool, but I'm like, this is where the game needs to be. I'm so excited. I have all of the confidence in the world. I can't wait to just play at every single event and play with everybody. It's going to be awesome. Gen Con, it's going to be you and Ryder, who's also on the development team, and then I'm going to be there as well. So I'll be hanging out with you at Gen Con. In fact, are you going to be at Origins? No. So you'll be at Gen Con. So if anybody wants to come hang out with me and Brian and Ryder, we'll all be at Gen Con hanging out. That's going to be wild. I can't wait to hang out with you, Brian. But then at Origins, Brian won't be there, but we will have, I think you guys are going to have a pretty crazy booth, if I'm not mistaken. I think you guys have I made a video about this recently. You guys have a special Horde bundle you're offering where you can get access to a promo card. You can get some free merchandise based on, you know, what you buy at the booth, which I'm really excited about. And yeah, they're going to have Learn to Play. and I'm
Yeah,
just
it's going to be a great event with a lot going on. It's going to be super fun. I'm really excited that we get to do it at this like it's pretty substantial presence, like
right.
within the first year of the launch. And at the same time, we're trying to have these be just really fantastic events and get to interact with the players and grow the player base, and while also like we're working on future sets and we're working on future formats and new types of products that we want to do, and all like other exciting announcements that we haven't made public yet. So
Yeah,
it's like
it's really exciting.
like two simultaneous paths of like, okay, focus on the now and then focus on the later.
Well, I will be at both of those events, so if anyone wants to come hang out with me at Origins, come hang out. I'll be there. And then me and Brian and Ryder will all be at Gen Con, so come say hello. It's going to be pretty wild. I'm excited about all of it. I can't wait. There's so much happening, and for me, it's like being a kid in a candy store. Like, it took me a long time to find a game as much as I like as Magic. I've been playing Magic for 30 years, and I normally don't bother with a lot of other games because I just inevitably go back to Magic, but Wonders is just, I don't know what it is, man. There's something really special about it, and I can't stop playing it, and I don't know, maybe that's because of you. Not to, stoke your ego too much or anything, but it's the one common denominator between both of those games, so maybe that has something to do with it. But I also heard recently, we're going to move on to the fourth topic here. I heard recently there was some kind of situation happening with Pokemon. You were credited. Did you just find out you were credited for some Pokemon sets? What's the deal with that?
Okay, so I was pretty high profile in terms of the excitement and interest in the Magic sets that I worked on in the past. So I had lead design credits on 8 Magic sets, and I kind of was in the habit of also, mentioning here and there that I was on Pokemon design teams too. This is for like the 1999 to 2002 sets at Wizards of the Coast R&D. And in the games that I worked on, I never came up that much, and I knew I had some design credits, but I just looked up some of the old rule books that I didn't even have, but I was able to find them, and I have credits on 6 Pokemon expansions,
Wow.
including the Neo Genesis and all the Neo sets of that era. And like, when you're a game designer, you work on a lot of stuff and you make contributions to lots of projects, and you never quite know, like, do your name go in the credits or not? And I kind of knew my name was in the credits for some of those, but I never actually looked it up. And
So you didn't really know what you were actually credited for,
now,
if you
now
were
when
actually.
I go to a card show, I can brag about that, I guess.
Yeah, that's hilarious. I never even realized you worked on Pokemon. But yeah, 6 sets, huh? How extensive was your involvement? Was it just like a couple cards, or was it?
So Pokemon was a weird situation because we had the card art and abilities would come from the Japanese team. This is before Pokemon even existed as a company. It was Creatures and Media Factory, and so those cards had been published in Japanese, and then it was up to our team to figure out which of the Japanese cards would go into the English-based sets, and what the rarity schemes would be, and what the special treatments on them would be, and create the pre-con decks, and productize them, and kind of optimize those products for org play and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
So we didn't actually get to invent any new Pokemon ourselves, but our work did have a huge impact on the success of English Pokemon.
Right.
So
that's crazy, man. You learn something new every day. Is there anything you haven't worked on, Brian?
Rhetorical question, I guess.
We're going to move on to topic 5 here. We're going to change gears a little bit and go back to talking about Magic. It was recently announced. I don't know how much involvement you have with MTG Arena, or if that was even an idea back when you were still at the company. But they announced a new rule, or I guess I shouldn't say a new rule, but a new way that they're going to handle things on MTG Arena concerning reprints. And it's one of the first, player first things that I've seen them done on Arena, or at least that I've seen people respond to feeling like it's a player first thing. And so what they're doing is, up until now on Arena, every time a card came out in a new set that was a reprint of an old card, but it's a new version in the new set, has new art, you would have to acquire all 4 copies of that new version in order for it to count as you having the whole set collected. You'd still have to open those in boosters. There is some duplicate protection built into the game where if you have 4 copies of a card in a set, it will no longer let you open cards, that card, when you open boosters of the set. So as long as you just keep buying these digital boosters in Arena, you're not going to get a 5th, a 6th, a 7th copy that's useless to you. You're going to keep opening new cards, and if it gets to the point where there's only 1 rare left that you don't have a playset of, that'll be the only thing you can open. But with reprints, it wouldn't take into account older sets. So, if you had 4 copies of Swords to Plowshares from 5 years ago, and now Swords to Plowshares is reprinted in the newest set, you'd still have to acquire all 4 copies of Swords to Plowshares in order to complete the set. It would still let you open Swords to Plowshares in the new set. And more importantly, if you wanted to use the art, it would count them separately. So if you only had one of the new Swords to Plowshares and you really liked the art the best and you wanted it to look like all 4 copies in your deck looked like that, you couldn't do it. You'd have to have 1 be that and 3 be the old version that you have. It would treat it almost like a physical collection. It was just kind of weird. So recently they implemented a player first change where now if you acquire a duplicate, you only need 1 copy from the new set, the new version. And now it's going to count you as having a whole play set. You can have all 4 of that art in your deck if you want. You don't have to open more. You won't open more copies of that if you've already got a total of 4 copies across every set of the same reprinted card. And it's something that Magic fans on Arena have been asking for forever and never thought that we'd get. Is this a good sign? Do you think that Wizards did this out of the kindness of their heart, or is there something else I'm missing here?
I haven't played Arena for a while. How hard is it to get cards from past sets?
You would have to spend wild cards probably. It's a lot harder than newer sets. With newer sets, you're always winning packs of whatever the newest set is, so it's a lot easier. As you just normally play Arena, complete quests and stuff, you'll get resources. You can buy the newest pack. Same thing with if you're in drafts or sealed on Arena, you're gonna win prize packs that are whatever the newest set is. So it does get a little bit harder to get stuff that's old. You can either buy just a whole bunch of old packs and hope you get lucky, or you can craft them with wild cards, but it's really hard to get those wild cards. You basically have to open I think it's every 6 packs that you open, you get 1 rare wild card, and every...
Are the old packs high priced?
I want to say, I believe they're 1,000 coins a pack. I don't remember what it equates to if you were to just spend money. I do know it was a pain in the butt enough that people weren't very happy with it. And it's just something, it's a problem that just keeps coming up. You had problems on both end where, like, you had people that already had 4 copies of a card that didn't want to waste their rare of their packs that they were buying or winning, opening cards they already had. They didn't care about the new art. Then you also had people on the other side that were just like, oh, I love the new art. I just want to play with all copies of the new art. But, like, I don't have 4 copies yet. I got to keep opening packs to try and get 4 copies, even though it's a digital game and I already have them. And they just felt like there should be more quality of life experience there since it's not a physical game. With physical, you can kind of, you know, understand it because you literally have to get them if you want to use them.
I mean, I'm sure this is something that took a lot of planning, and usually in situations like this, like it's low risk to do nothing, and so you do nothing until the player feedback reaches a certain level that, like, you're confident that most people will be happy and you'll get some kind of excitement bump out of doing it, right? Because, like, if you're not really confident about that, then you make a change, and then some people are like, well, I've been trying to collect this old art for a long time and now I'm really mad that anyone can do it, right? It's like, damned if you do, damned if you don't. But like once you hear the same thing enough times, then you can say, okay, we're actually going to spend some resources to develop this and roll it out correctly and test it, and we think there's going to be, you know, vastly more benefit than drawback when we do that. So you only get, like, so much developer hours and, you know, testing time to implement new features, you know, every product cycle. So
on the player side of things, it seems like people are in 2 camps. You have the players that are pessimistic, that are like, oh, they're just throwing us a bone now because there's some other way they're going to try to take advantage of us for, you know, in the future. For a while, people have kind of been not super excited about the way the economy works in MTG Arena. A lot of people talk about it a lot. But then you have people on the other side that are like, oh, they're finally starting to care enough and move in our direction, and this is a sign of things to come. And I don't know which way it's going to end up. The jury's out on that, but I thought it was interesting enough to bring up and just kind of get your opinion on, and also anybody that's watching to make sure that they knew that was a thing that happened, so you guys don't have to waste wild cards on extra reprints and stuff anymore, which is really, really awesome for you guys if you play Arena. But I just thought it was really interesting, you know? That does bring me to our 6th topic, our second to last, our penultimate topic, if you will. And this is something that I'm really confused about, and I'm really interested in hearing your take on. This is still Magic the Gathering. The Marvel Spider-Man set, it turns out that it's only going to be a physical set. Now, they announced a while ago that from now on, all Universes Beyond sets were going to be standard legal. And that every single IP that came into Magic, it would be a standard legal set so that newer players, when they are getting into the game from the IP that they love, and that's the reason they pick it up and give it a try, they're able to naturally transition to the most accessible format, being standard, which I kind of understand that. But we're also getting 3 Universes Beyond sets a year and 3 in-lore Magic sets a year, so 50% of all those standard sets are now going to be other IPs. The thing that's weird about this Spider-Man set, it will not be on MTG Arena or Magic the Gathering Online. It's only going to be in physical, but there is going to be a functionally identical set that comes to both of the digital versions of the game that is card for card, functionally, mechanically exactly the same as the Spider-Man set, but all of the cards have completely different names and completely different arts and do not reference the Spider-Man IP whatsoever. And they said this is something that for the foreseeable future will only happen to Marvel sets, could potentially happen to other IPs down the line, but it's not happening to every Universes Beyond set. So Final Fantasy's coming to Arena, that's fine. Whatever other sets they have lined up are coming to Arena. And I just thought this was really curious, and I feel like it seems like not a big deal on the surface, but there are some subtle ways in which maybe it is. I'm just really curious what your thoughts on it are.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like kind of an unfortunate workaround. I mean, it's probably the right thing to do with the constraints that they had. So, not only did I work at Wizards R&D for 10 years, but I was also creative director at Disney, and I did game design on Marvel games too. So I can kind of almost guarantee that this issue that has to do with licensing rights, and that Marvel, especially those big Disney IPs, are carved up very intricately in terms of this character can be in this type of product, but not that type, because it would compete. It's probably like Marvel Snap or something like that. It has the digital rights to use those characters in trading cards or something similar. And so they had to put in a workaround like this, which is like the least objectionable way of doing things given those constraints. So you can still have the fun of building those types of decks, but it definitely is like the diet brownie or something like that.
Yeah,
It doesn't taste like a real brownie. Like
it gets a little messy. It gets very unelegant, if that's an actual word. It becomes much less of an elegant solution, I feel. And I'm curious what your opinion is, and maybe you don't have one, but like, I don't know if maybe Wizards knew this all along and they were just waiting for the right time to say it, or if they didn't realize until they were already knee-deep into building out the set that, oh wait, we're not going to be able to put this on digital platforms. And I think you have more insight into how long a set is being developed for, how much in advance that starts, and I'm curious what you think is the more likely scenario because of that.
Yeah, so this is all conjecture. Like I don't have any actual information, but I would expect that what happened was Lord of the Rings sold incredibly well, and they were able to show those licensing payments that were sent to Lord of the Rings to other potential partners like Final Fantasy and Marvel, and say, like, look, here's what we can do. And then Marvel, comes back and says, well, here's this problem and that problem. And Wizards was probably like, okay, there's some wrinkles here, but whatever, we'll make it work. Whatever you need, we'll make it work, because we see the potential of how much we can sell and grow the player base, and how excited, like, people generally project super money hungry motivations onto Wizards, which there's some truth to that, but also like Wizards is full of a whole bunch of like genuine fans of
right.
Comics and games and all those properties, and there's like probably half the design team already had a whole bunch of cards that they couldn't wait to see come out, and so there's going to be like a huge push to make this deal work. Whatever it takes. And so this is probably one of those things where it's like, okay, you're going to, step on a few thorns like this, but that shouldn't stop you from, going down that path.
Yeah, I would assume the benefits of like an IP like Spider-Man, you're going to get a lot more out of that in the physical product than you would in the digital product anyway. I don't think you'll get the same kind of bump in player usage on Arena that you're going to get in people buying the physical cards because they're just Spider-Man fanatics and want to get those physical cards. So, I mean, it kind of makes sense to a certain degree. Like, let's just take the lesser of two evils. Let's make sure we make this product available to people physically that are super fans and want to do it, and then find a way to functionally make that work on Arena. It does make sense to me. There are some growing pains, especially for me. On the one hand, I'm really excited for being a content creator where my standard content that I make is deck text for standard. I was dreading having to constantly build standard decks and go up against Spider-Man for the rest of my life, you know, and like kind of pull me out of the fantasy experience by having to, even if I don't incorporate those cards into my deck, I'm going to be playing against them whether I like it or not. And sort of like a bitter tinge to what some people really get out of the game. And now on Arena, I don't have to worry about that. Functionally, I get the same cards, you know, that I would have gotten. They're gonna be flavored around random magic IPs and you know magic things that work within the Magic universe. So that excites me, at least. I kind of get the best of both worlds. You know, I'll get my fix of Spider-Man because I think it will be fun to play Spider-Man. But for me, I think it'll be more fun to play the Spider-Man cards and almost like as a standalone thing and pretend it's its own game and just play fully Spider-Man decks just to be immersed in the IP. Mm-hmm. And obviously I'll be building deck techs for Magic with whatever the best standard cards are for the decks. I'm not going to let the flavor limit my deck building. But it's exciting for me that at least I can feel like I stay a little bit more in flavor when I'm, you know, making all of my content on Arena. But it does get a little bit weird. Like
we saw kind of how it's going to work out, like with Godzilla cards in Ikoria, right? It's like this, you can get Rodan or you can get Vadrock, and the Godzilla fans can, you know, go for the Rodan, and everybody else who doesn't care about it.
But that's where the subtlety starts to really kick in of the ways in which it's different. Because of whatever the licensing rights are, it looks like they can't list the proper name under the card the same way they did with the Godzilla cards. So it's not going to be like, you know, Godzilla, but then it's the actual card name, so you know exactly what card it's a copy of. It's literally only going to have whatever name it is on Arena, and then only going to have whatever name it is in physical. And there aren't going to be any organic cues as to which card is which card in the other way of playing.
And there's no paper versions of the Arena versions.
Correct. I mean, that theoretically down the line they could if they wanted to, but as far as we know right now, there's no plan for that. I think there's just a lot of subtle ways it starts to get a little weird. Like, if I'm making content and I build a deck, do I have to list two different deck lists, one for physical and one for Arena, because they're different card names? And when I film myself making content, like, am I breaking down the deck and making content for the Arena version, or am I calling the cards by their physical version? Like, how much do I go into either? Do I just ignore all of the physical Spider-Man cards themselves, since all of the gameplay is coming from Arena? I think there's just some... It tends to get...
I was in charge of some, like, future, Masters booster set or something like that, I would be wanting to pull cards, like the most high-value cards from the Arena sets and put them into physical boosters and in some reprint set, for sure.
Yeah, it's it gets kind of weird for content creators, and I'm sure I'm not the only one that's feeling that. I'm sure every single content creator that makes content for Magic is thinking to themselves right now, like, what do I do? Like, this is the first big shakeup to how I film and record things and create content. Like, do I talk, which card set do I talk about? Like, which card set do I list the deck as including? Like, if I take a deck I made on Scryfall or, you know, Moxfield or one of those sets and try to bring it into Arena, like, is there going to be a weird, like, do I have to change names? And, like, if I copy, like, the top 8 deck list from the World Championships that happen to be a physical tournament, now I can't import it into Arena and I have to do all this legwork figuring out what the actual cards... Like, for me, because I'm a content creator, whatever, if I have to do extra work, I have to do extra work. But for the average user, some of that stuff just feels a little inelegant, you know, fumbling around. And I'm curious how much it's going to affect the player base and how annoying it will actually be, or if it'll just kind of blow over.
Yeah, I think people will just pretend that it says, you know, the character name underneath Godzilla's name. That's what SpongeBob did, right? Didn't SpongeBob have Joda underneath SpongeBob's name?
I think SpongeBob did it.
Oh my god. Yeah, right. SpongeBob says Joda the Unifier right under him. So we'll just have like a pretend Joda the Unifier under each of those Spider-Man cards.
It'll be interesting to see how it all pans out. It feels messy.
Poor Joda. I like to imagine that like Joda was pulled into another universe, you know, and he's incarnated. That time I reincarnated as SpongeBob.
Listen, the SpongeBob set is just Halloween. It's Halloween on Dominaria, and everybody's dressing up in costumes. That's it. That's your headcanon, and then you're fine. Right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. That seemed really crazy. It's definitely a first for Magic to go that direction with a set. I'm really curious to just see how it all pans out. I hope it's not as messy as it seems like it might be on the surface, and it just works out fine. But it's really intriguing either way to me. But we're gonna move on to the final topic of today, the one that I've been most excited about getting to. And I don't even know how long this topic's gonna be or how much you can share with me. But you recently announced that Set 2 for Wonders of the First is coming in October. And I believe it's called Call of the Stones. Is that correct?
Yeah, Call of the Stones in October is our set number 2, and we have another set of 400 plus cards with more than 30 tokens and alt arts, and it's a huge set. It's a huge follow up.
All right. So we have some official details. Over 400 cards, over 30 tokens. I'm interested in how much you can share with me. Are we getting an even representation across the set of every orbital?
Yeah, we are.
Okay. I'm dipping my toe in here. I'm starting with the easy questions.
This is like start with the easy ones first.
Do you have a specific date in mind, regardless of whether you can share that or not, for it to launch?
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know what date it's happening?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Is that a date you can share with me?
I don't think we're sharing it yet.
Okay. Can't blame a guy for trying.
Mm-hmm.
I just saw recently you had a big, I believe, what you call a sprint for the game, for Set 2, a design sprint. Could you explain to everybody watching what a design sprint is, and what you guys did recently?
Yeah, so one of our traditions in developing Wonders of the First is to get the whole design development team together and or play and playtest leads. It's usually like 6 people or so in like a big Airbnb house, and just spend 5 days playtesting, reviewing art, staying up late, having fun, trying out crazy decks, coming up with ideas, and it's sort of like a big, creative brainstorm fest. And like you're up late at night, what's 1 a.m. You're throwing ideas around. It's super fun. It's a way to do some creative development that you don't see happen in like an office boardroom all that much. So yeah, we do them in South Carolina, or we've done one in Austin. We went to Denver. So sometimes when we're in a location for an event or other business reasons, we'll have like a 5-day design sprint session.
So was this the first sprint for this set, or the last sprint for this set, or the only sprint? Do you only do one sprint per set?
This is it varies, but this was the last sprint for the set. Yeah.
Okay.
We had a couple.
So prior to all getting together here and playing it at this sprint, were you only playtesting like digitally with Tabletop Arena or Tabletop Simulator, things like that, or have people on the design team been playing with, printed out physical representations like face to face?
Oh yeah, we play face to face for sure, and some of the team is remote, but enough people live close to each other or at the same office that we can play face to face.
So the sprint was more an excuse to like get everybody together to do the thing that some of you are doing on a normal basis anyway?
Yeah, and it's a lot more conducive to a good creative environment to have everyone sit there and we could all review art and names and abilities up on a big screen, and people are throwing out ideas, and it takes a long time to do that. Like that, it takes a couple of days to go review everything, get everybody's opinions, everybody's playtest feedback and things like that, and give it the time that it deserves. So like, yeah, you want to put 14 hours a day into those sessions.
So these rough draft versions of the cards that you're printing out and playing with, do they have like final names, or are they still like development names that will change? Is that kind of information like locked down at this point, or do you still have like pet names that you're calling the cards and haven't figured out a final name for them?
So throughout the development process, we use code names, which are like kind of lighthearted, kind of jokey. I think almost all TCGs do this, and then like once the art gets finalized and the classes get finalized and all that stuff, then you lock down the name from the lore, and it becomes like official canon.
Interesting. Yeah. Good, because my next point I was going to make is after some zoom in enhance sleuthing on my end, I noticed a card named Metal Pipe, and I was like, are we actually getting Metal Pipe, or is that just a code name? Can you confirm that's a code name?
That's a code name, yeah.
Okay. What does it do?
It gives you an extra...
Wait, you're telling me?
Yeah. What's that?
You're actually telling me? Or are you making something up to troll me?
I'm looking at the playtest deck that's right here next to me. Where'd you see this anyways?
I zoomed in and enhanced on your sprint video, the video you put up of just showing those little clips of you doing the sprint. There was one frame. You can zoom in and enhance and see that one of the cards is called Metal Pipe. Looks like it's maybe got some spikes or something on it.
Just like it's like Blade Runner. We're like living in what year was Blade Runner anyways?
Most of the stuff was blurred out, it looked like, in post, so I think whoever was editing it to the video together was cognizant that somebody would be sleuthing like I was. So the only things I could see were things that were relatively irrelevant. It looked like there was a cat as well, but I couldn't make out the whole name. Definitely couldn't make out any of the text.
Metal Pipe is giving you an on-attack buff here.
An on-attack buff?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but you're not going to tell me what buff?
There it is right here.
There was one other card. Yeah, that's it. That's my boy. There was
sitting right here.
One other card that I noticed some information about. The last thing I'm going to ask you about from my sleuthing. And I don't know what the card is, but one thing I noticed on all of the test print cards is at the bottom of the art, there is the name of the orbital, because they're all black and white, right? The rough draft versions you're playing with, they're all black and white. So since they're not colored, it's got the name of the orbital at the bottom of the art. And I noticed there's a card in there. Don't know what card it's called. The name is covered up. But where that orbital name should have been, there was no word. Are we getting cards in this set that don't have an orbital? Am I too much of a sleuth for my own good?
It probably got cut off. So our playtest cards are colored, and there's just the printout that you saw was like a black and white printout. But
am I getting a no comment?
Yeah, that's. I won't answer.
Okay. No comment. I see. Is there anything you can tell us about set 2? Obviously, you can't tell us any cards yet. Although I do believe there was a mention on Discord that some spoilers were going to be coming soon, but it was vague, and we didn't really get any information about when. But
yeah, and so we are going to have some reveals of cards for flavor text writing. We're going to put some cards out to the community to have people submit flavor text ideas. So that's coming out shortly. And we will do kind of some slow reveals of new cards, but you know, we still got to lock down the final QC on them before we make them go public.
For sure. Is there anything about developing this set that you can share with me as far as something that was harder than you expected, harder than set 1, or easier than you expected, easier than set 1, or just something that notably set this set apart during the design process for you?
So it's a big decision how you want to balance power level, because you want your old cards to retain their value. You don't want to have big creep, but you also want to get people excited to buy the latest thing and grow your player base. So it's like a hard decision of like, are you going to obsolete anything from the last set? And like, are you like something? If the pool goes from 400 to 800 cards, you know, something is going to fall behind and something is going to move ahead. So that was a difficult back and forth. Right. And in existence, we clumped a lot of the power at rare, and so you know, a whole ton of the very powerful decks, like you could build without getting the full set of mythics. And so now we're starting to spread it out a little bit. So put a little more of the power at common, a little more of the power at mythic than we got to see before. So.
Nice. All right. So I'm just going to ask you a few yes or no questions, and you probably won't answer most of these, but I'm going to try. All right. Are we getting... well, we already asked one. Are we getting any cards that don't have an orbital? And you said... no comment.
No comment on that.
Are we getting any cards that are multi-orbital?
No.
How many new mechanics Are you comfortable sharing a number? I know you can't tell me the new mechanics. How many new mechanics?
Yeah, so like some mechanics are kind of utility mechanics, and some are splashy and exciting. So there's at least 6.
Are we getting a new version of an old character?
Yes.
Ooh. Okay. How about one last one for you? Ooh, what do I want to ask? I don't want to ask you too many questions, so I'm only going to ask you one more. But are we getting a new card type? Or are we sticking to the type. 4?
No, it's the 4 card types of wonders. We still have plenty of great design space to explore before we start digging down to that fundamental of a level.
Have you ever had theoretical discussions about maybe potentially what you could do for another card type? I don't want you to tell me what the card type is, but have you ever just had discussions about the possibility?
Yeah, for sure. The as the game matures, throughout its life cycle, I would say that it's probable that we end up doing a new card type at some point in the future.
I'm really excited. I don't know if you can tell. One thing you mentioned earlier about with this set doing a flavor text contest. Have you considered the idea of doing a create a card contest? Magic the Gathering used to do this way back in the day before they shifted over to making a card for the champion. They used to have an online create a card contest where people would submit cards and the development team would pick the ones they think would be balanced and work within a set, and then people would vote on them until it eventually got down to one won the vote and made it into the set. Any thoughts about maybe doing that in the future?
Yeah,
I think it could be a good idea.
I'm very familiar because the very first one of those was Forgotten Ancient, and they stuck it in my set and said, "Here you go. You fans made this. You got to put this." It was in Scourge, and I'm like, What do you mean? I got to put this in my set, and it turned out okay, it's pretty cool. The fans did a good job here.
So do you like Forgotten Ancient? Or is it more annoying than anything, or did you like it once you finally put it in?
Oh yeah, I liked it. I thought it was.
So I remember taking part in that. I remember being on the other side those days. I remember being incredibly excited and submitting all sorts of ideas. That was when I was still young, Richie, before I became, disillusioned with one day I could be a developer or something. And yeah, I got super excited, and I think a lot of people did get excited for that sort of thing. And even my Twitch audience now, we have a create a card section for Magic where, people that are regulars of mine, they're constantly coming up with card ideas. Every time a new set comes out, they're taking all the new ideas for mechanics and putting their own spin on it, almost like when Magic had the blocks, and you take the third set and you try and take a mechanic introduced in the first set and turn it up to 11 and try to find the weirdest, the craziest way you can use it that makes it more interesting than the base set. A lot of people in my chat, that's what they do. They'll make custom cards with, oh, there's these new ideas for mechanics in the new set. How can I take that and do something really crazy with it? I think my community would be super excited about something like that. I know at the time that it happened back in the day for Magic, I was super excited, and a lot of people were. I'm just gonna throw it out there. I think that would be amazing for set 3 or set 4 or whatever happens down the line.
It's a good idea. I like it.
Get people really, really excited and invested, and sitting on the edge of their seat trying to see like if their card can be good enough and make the cut. I remember every day I'd be like, oh, am I gonna make it? Oh, I came up with a better idea. Forget it if that one doesn't make it, and submit another one, and just
Right.
like, oh man, I was going nuts. So
Yeah, it's fun.
definitely keeps the player base invested, at least the portion of the player base that has, you know, a ton of creativity like that. Which there is definitely a huge portion of the Wonders community, I think, that has that kind of mindset with the way I've seen people put together decks. That's how you can tell when people have that kind of developer tilted mindset, is the way that they deck build. You know, I feel like deck building is a way to explore that. But
yeah, no,
that's
what Wonders has like kind of a magnetic pull of card design. Like there's some games where you're like, okay, I got to sit down and think of card ideas, and it's a chore. But like Wonders, it just like it's just wants new cards to be designed for it, and it's just like when you're thinking about one, 3 other ones just like randomly fall out, and you're like, okay, I got to remember this, I got to write that down, and I put that in the storage.
yeah, it's super fun. I'm excited about the future. I'm glad that you're making this game. I don't know where I'd be if it wasn't for this game. This game's just kind of overtaken my life, you know? And it's special, so I appreciate all the hard work you're putting in, for sure. I think that's gonna do it for episode 1 of this podcast, and I'm excited about the future for it. We're gonna have to brainstorm some ideas for names. And again, if anybody in the comments wants to drop us ideas for names for this podcast, I'm excited about where it's going.
Yeah. Well, thanks everyone for sticking with us. Love to all, and thank you so much, Richie.
Yeah, I'm going to see you at Gen Con, and maybe some of the SCG CON dates, depending on how things pan out. So I'll see you there, and if any of you guys want to come hang out with us, I'll be at Origins, we'll both be at Gen Con, I'll be at all of the SCG CON dates, and Brian might be at some of them, and it's going to be a wild time. So I'll see you guys there, and until next time, thanks for hanging out with us. Thanks so much for checking out my channel. I'd like to give a huge shout out to all of my patrons over at Patreon. Without you guys, this channel would not be possible, so honestly, thank you from the bottom of my heart for all of your contributions. If you haven't yet, like and subscribe. The more likes we get and the quicker we get them, the bigger this channel will grow and the faster it will grow. I'd love nothing more than this channel to become something very special for you guys, but it's entirely up to you how fast that happens. Also, if you'd like more deck text, that's somewhere over there, and if you'd like to see what else the channel's been up to lately, that's somewhere up that way. Also, subscribe, circle below, do all the things.